a couple of listener questions here. I think we got a couple in the YouTube chat, and then we will get out of here. I saw one earlier. Jesse Bates playing 16 games this year. John, what do you think? It's from Terrell Howell in the YouTube chat.
I think that's a safe bet. I wouldn't say 16 starts necessarily, unless one of the two starters gets injured. But I think Bates is going to contribute from day one if everything goes to plan, and he'll be out there all year long. Now, how many starts he gets, how many snaps he gets, is up for question. But 16 games appeared in, yes, I would say that's safe.
Okay, so you watch a lot of film on these guys. You have undoubtedly watched at least some film on Jesse Bates. Is he the best safety on the Bengals roster right now?
That's tough. No, because I think that's a tiny bit outlandish. But I would say that, I mean, he was the highest drafted safety on the roster, right. So he has like more, like he's got like raw talent to him, and he can do, and he has range and deep field ability that Iloka and Williams doesn't have. I want to see it first before I would say that statement, but raw talent at 21 years old, I would say, in relative to like where Iloka and Williams were starting out, yeah, if you put it that way, yeah, I would say.
Yeah, so not now, but definitely could be in the near future. Yeah, I've got high hopes for the guy. To be honest, I wasn't too familiar with him. Really, I think you mentioned him as one of the possibilities when you came on the program before the draft as a guy that the Bengals might be looking at. And I think Dave Lapham also shortly before the draft saying, this is a guy to keep an eye on day two. Lo and behold, they take him. And when you see some of his plays, I mean, he's got athleticism. He's not the hardest hitter as Sean Williams and Iloka have proven to be, but he sure can turn the ball over, and that's something the Bengals need. So I think if he's healthy, he'll play all 16 games, and I think someone else kind of to make a point with one of our other folks in the YouTube chat. Someone else mentioned in our last segment about great players under Marvin Lewis, and Chris Crocker was mentioned. I don't know if he was a great player, but he filled that slot swingman type of thing, and maybe that's where the reason I bring that up is maybe that's where Jesse Bates starts as a slot, swingman type of guy, and that's how he plays a bunch of games. I don't know if you think that that's a possibility or not, but that's maybe where I see his initial role at least. Right?
For sure.
Yeah. All right, one more before we get out of here. It was let's see who it was. Dean Burke, who was most likely to start on the right side of the offensive line. Obviously, this is probably the most intriguing battle of Bengals training camp is who's going to play right guard and who's going to play right tackle. I think most people right now would say inside track at right tackle is probably Jake Fisher, but that's I don't know. This almost seems to be a weekly question, but it's still worthwhile, especially since you haven't been on the show for a little bit, John. I don't know, man. What do you think about guard? I mean, or is it maybe a late release? One of the final cuts. There's a guy that's surprisingly released. The Bengals maybe make a move and bring him in. I don't know.
I think it's this group. I would venture to say it could be a guy coming off the streets, but if that's the case, then I would assume maybe an injury occurred, either at right guard or right tackle. Here's what I'll say: I've got pretty good experience answering this question at this point. Whoever starts at right guard, I've been rehearsed in this area. I'm comfortable at least July 5th saying that whoever starts at right guard, I would say earned it in the sense that they would feel comfortable, and I would feel comfortable because Westerman has talent. I think Hopkins started coming along towards the end of the year where he's going to be a good position to reclaim that spot. I'm not so sure about Redmond. I think it's more of a 1A, 1B situation than a three-way battle. But whoever wins the battle between Hopkins and Westerman, I would feel modestly comfortable that they're going to produce an average season, which is really like we're not expecting them to be good players or great players even. Just to stay out there, have the level of play, not go too high or too low. Just be a good body, I guess. Right tackle, I wouldn't say the same thing. I think if Bobby Hart's out there, something bad happened with Fisher. And honestly, I don't have a lot of faith that Bobby Hart can be a good NFL tackle at this point. I think he was always destined to be a guard, and then the Giants had to try him at a tackle, and he failed miserably. And I think Fisher's clearly the more talented player. I don't think it's close in that sense. I think they're preparing Hart to at least compete with Abuye as the swing guy, and he either wins that or he's ultimately cut. Regardless, Fisher is the clearly better talent there, and if he stays healthy under Pollock's tutelage, I have pretty good confidence that he's going to produce a decent season at right tackle.
Yeah, it's interesting about Hart. He is listed, at least last I checked, he was listed on the Bengals website as a guard/tackle. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of snaps he gets in the preseason and, how that affects his roster status. How confident are you, and how believable do you find the good stuff coming out of mini camps about Abuye, the improvements that's seen under Frank Pollock? He seems like a little bit of a different player. Maybe he realizes that he's not getting that fifth-year option and he's playing for some possible decent money. Do you find that believable, or have we seen who he is, and that's no matter who's coaching him? I am what I am, as Popeye would say, I guess.
I'm always of the opinion that players don't change. If good players become better, bad players just stay bad. But I will say this: Abuye under Alexander was not a good fit in the sense where Alexander's techniques with pass protection, it's a lot of hug techniques and not a lot of punching. And it's kind of the opposite for Frank Pollock, was more of an aggressive style of philosophy. Abuye's main strengths are, first of all, his feet and his length. And when he was punching at left tackle, he would do a decent job, but there's still not a lot of power to him. There's still not a lot of functional strength, kind of pretty important needs as a left tackle. So I think as a player, we've seen who he is, but Pollock, I think, can get out to him to be a lesser version of what Anthony Collins was. Some guy who you could just survive with, but just as a swing tackle and not as like a full-time starter. Yeah. You wouldn't want him out there for 50, 60 snaps a game. So in that sense, I think he's going to do okay in that role as long as we don't see him too much. But regardless, at this point, it's just hard for me to expect him to turn into a player that was worth drafting in the first round, because that's in my perspective, that's the only way that they can get, that they can see that pick as a success. Obviously, not just like a career backup, but just as someone who's worth a first round pick. And I don't think we're ever going to see that from Abuye.
Yeah, and I got a couple of little sidebar questions for you. Do you see Abuye being an effective player maybe this year, as we've seen the Bengals? Now, granted, this was under Paul Alexander, but they have used a sixth offensive lineman, kind of the jumbo tackle, extra tackle. Abuye did it as a rookie when he finally came back from his injury, just to get some snaps and some experience. Do you see that may be something that they use him in this year, or is that not really part of Pollock's scheme?
I would have to look back at some Dallas film to see if they utilize six offensive linemen, because I'm not 100% confident in answering that question. But as a six offensive lineman, like Abuye would be fine, just because that sixth guy is mainly used to just combo block like the force player on the edge. And, and when you're not giving Abuye like a one-on-one where he has to, completely seal a guy out of a gap, he can do fine. Like that's just something any NFL tackle could do. And then you factor in, Abuye's got athleticism. If Pollock can, maybe hammer in some points about angles in terms of zone blocking, you can get a solid role player out of that role. Like Dennis Rowland was always like that guy back in the day, and he was just like maul guys over because he was so big. That's not really Abuye's game, but for a lack of power, you can instill an understanding of angles and just leverage and that stuff. And if Pollock can get that under, in Abuye's mind in the next coming months, he can get a decent player for that small role.
Yeah. Last question, I guess, and then we'll get out of here. Again, it's kind of a sidebar to the initial question posted by the fan there. Are you pretty confident that Billy Price is a Frank Pollock guy? Because there was talk that, hey, Ragnow was maybe the guy that they wanted all along, and they settled for Price. I mean, are you pretty confident that that's still a guy or the guy that Frank Pollock wanted and can do well in his scheme?
From what I've heard of just about like that whole situation, I don't think that they feel like they settled for Price. Now that conversation might have been different for like Bodine, 4 years ago, but I don't think they settled, I guess, quote unquote, for Price. I think he was always a guy that not only just Pollock, but just like the entire coaching staff just fell in love with upon meeting and just wanted to bring him in as soon as possible. And I think, labeling guys as like, this coach is like a kind of guy is always kind of dangerous because it can lead to some bad things, whatnot. But I think Price is going to fit in fine, at least under Pollock, in terms of just like the culture and stuff like that. And he'll be a solid player. And I think one thing that Pollock's good at is that he's good at getting the absolute most out of the guys that he develops. And I don't think that'll be a problem for Price.
Guy's got the biggest baby face I've ever seen. He's just this gigantic guy.
Imagine if he grew a beard, though.
Yeah, that would be funny. He's got like this 12-year-old kid face on this like gigantic body. It's a weird.
That would complete the Whitworth transformation. You always have mini Whitworth. Yeah. If you can grow a beard, that would do it.
Yeah, and they've got the shaved dome. So yeah, that makes sense. John, thanks so much for jumping on with us. Thanks so much for your time. I hope we make this somewhat regular where you can come on to this program. Where can fans find your stuff, get in touch with you? Obviously, aside from love having you on this show, part of the reason why we do is because of the positive feedback that you get from your great film breakdowns and everything on Cincy Jungle. But tell us, where we can find your stuff and all that good stuff.
I'm mainly just on Twitter, being an idiot, at John__Sheeran. That's where you can find. Oh, and also the YouTube channel DNH Sports. I do that with former Cincy Jungle writer Daddy-O McDuck, and we're on a little hiatus because he had some work to do, but we should be back in full force when training camp starts. And along with being on this show, I hope to be on the show in the future, and you can find me there.
Awesome. Well, tell Daddy-O what's up. We miss him, but
sure.
Yeah, tell him what's up. He's a good dude. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. Again, you can get this program on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, and CincyJungle.com. You can get in touch with us via Twitter at BengalsOBI and via email theobinsider@gmail.com. For John Sheeran, I'm Anthony Cosenza. Thanks so much for listening to our program. We will continue to bring you all kinds of coverage throughout the summer here. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. We'll talk to you soon.